Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Democratic View. I'm the hostess. My name is Phyllis Italiano, and I have a hero for the Montauk area, and his name is Jeremy Samuelson, and he's the Executive Director of Concerned Citizens of Montauk. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so how is Montauk doing these days?
It's getting warmer, you know. But Montauk's always a couple weeks behind even the rest of town. Earlier in the week, I had a chance to go into the city. Everything's in basically full leaf.
No.
And then you drive backwards through time the further you get out on the island, and then you get to Montauk and the forsythia is blooming.
So are they shaking in advance of the coming season?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a buzz. Where our office is right next door to what's now Zum Schneider. It's been many things over the years, but
yes, I know that.
So those guys are back now, and there's kind of a little hive of activity there, and there's folks working on the other building on the other side, and so Montauk's definitely waking up, and I think everyone is. I don't know why. I don't know what we're all basing this on, but everyone feels like this summer's gonna be kind of a crazy one. Whether that's because winter, we earned it. We definitely earned it this winter. So, whether everyone just can't wait to get out here or what, I don't know. But everyone's just kind of feeling like it's going to be a big one.
Oh dear. I love to tell the story about when I first came out here, and my family was in Watermill, and I wanted to be near, but not too near, which is why I went past to East Hampton, and I love the springs because I love Gardiner's Bay. I'm a swimmer. At least I think I'm a swimmer. And so then my then husband said, well, where's the golf course? So I took him out to Montauk Downs. And I looked at Montauk and I said, wow, what a place. Why didn't I buy here? Yeah. This is crazy. I should have bought Montauk. I don't say that anymore, Jeremy. I really don't. I see it in the summertime, and I just don't go there in the summer. I go there in the winter. I go there in the spring. I go there in the fall. Yeah. But in the summer, it gets really crazy out there, and it's tough. It's tough to live. Yeah. I don't know how the people do it.
Nobody goes there anymore. It's too crowded.
Really?
Well, wasn't that Yogi Berra or somebody who said that? But, so. Yeah, it's is the question. Are we balancing what we're trying to do with either the built or the environmental infrastructure that we have? And unfortunately, I think the answer is no. And I think there are improvements that we can make in terms of infrastructure, so septic management, where do we get our water, where's the stormwater go, parking, affordable housing. These are all critical infrastructure issues that I think we have to take on in a very deliberate way. But simultaneous to that, I think we have to look at what are our expectations. And nobody said this to me, but I have this idea that I think there are folks around the table who believe that we're on sort of an infinite growth path in terms of how we build in our community. And that can't happen. I mean, you look at a map and you say, okay, look at Montauk, for example, surrounded by water, 68% preserved. We know what full build-out looks like. So how does the infinite growth pattern line up with this reality of land that pretty much is already spoken for? We know what goes where, and some of those things probably need to get moved around a little bit, septic infrastructure being, again, a good one. But the idea that we're just going to keep finding other corners to put stuff in, I think is a notion that we need to walk away from, and we need to look back at what we've already built and ask ourselves the question, how do we realign these things? How do we improve them? How do we provide incentives for partnerships where business owners and property owners can upgrade but have some responsibility to do things like make sure there's adequate parking, make sure that, again, the septic, goes where it needs to go, that we're not contributing to overcrowding problems. All of these things that I think if we take a deep breath, we can actually get to. So something that has, I think, gotten some momentum in Montauk now is this notion of hamlet planning. So, and I think you had a hand when the comp plan in all of those conversations going back a certain number of years.
No,
for
I
some
wasn't
reason
here.
Okay.
No, I was still, well, actually, I was here. I had bought by then, but I wasn't I wasn't politically active.
Okay.
But I am politically active now, so I do know that the Hamlet Studies is something that is going to become a reality for all of us, and I think we do need it, definitely. And I know one of the problems that that Montauk faces more than the Springs faces, because we don't have oceanfront. You have oceanfront.
Right.
And ocean is a problem. I mean, much as we love it, much as we want to go in it, and much as we want to play it on our beaches and stuff, it can be very dangerous in times of storm, and of course we know that the plans that was originally put forth by the Army Corps of Engineers is now on hold, and I don't know. We had a thing at the library last week about what do we do with the advancing sea, and
that was part of the Toomey lecture series?
Yes.
How was that? I had wanted to make that, but I couldn't.
It was very good.
Yeah?
It was very good because they had a couple of people there from the city. And it's interesting because they talked about places like Pelham Bay and stuff, which I happened to pass this week and looked as I drove by to see what they were talking about with the wetlands being so important, to prevent the kind of destruction and make sure that those kinds of areas don't get developed.
Yeah.
And the problem, of course, in Montauk was that they built a lot of things in very wrong places. You wonder who was around in those days that they didn't say, no, maybe we shouldn't do that.
No.
I went to Fire Island for many years, and my sister and brother-in-law had a house right on the ocean. Moved it back twice.
Really?
Twice.
Yeah.
And then said, so long,
Yeah.
Because they realized. And we worked very hard on that. On our one street, it was every year. Snow fencing in the fall and the spring, the planting. I know because I was responsible for watering on our side, making sure that dune grass was planted and encouraged to grow, because that held the dune, that they were on. But, unfortunately, came the storm of 95, I think it was, or 96, when I walked from one end of town to Fair Harbor, and houses in the surf. I mean, if you've ever seen that, you'll never forget it as long as you live. It's an amazing sight to see that. As a matter of fact, a guy named Jim LaRocca, who lives out here now, and he had sold his house to somebody in Doomwood and said, don't do anything to this house. You're right on this. The guy put a lot of money into it, and there it was in the ocean. That's startling.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot in there, I think we have to acknowledge that the oceanfront in downtown Montauk is not going to look the same in 20 years. And we really need to take ownership of the dynamic nature of the ocean front. And what I mean by that is we need to take responsibility for our own actions along the ocean front. It's going to be a process. You know, the community, I think, is fairly described as really divided. And we haven't had that Long Beach wake-up call where, you know, Hurricane Sandy came roaring through there and, you know, yeah, we got a little hit, but, you know, folks in Long Beach really took it on the chin.
Yeah.
And my fear is that before we really appreciate the gravity of what we're dealing with here, we sadly might have to, you know, have a scarier event happen to our community. I hope and pray that's not the case. I hope we can have conversation and dialogue that gets us to realize that whether it's because we do something differently in the next 20 years or Mother Nature deals us a bad hand, that beach is going to look very different in 20 years. And I think the idea that a lot of folks walk around with, that the beach is a static thing and that if we, you know, engineer our way out of this, we might be able to find some way to prove something that nobody else has ever been able to prove in the history of the world. So, I mean, that's kind of speaking, you know, in very broad terms, but very specifically in downtown Montauk, when you take the many challenges that exist right now, so what's your coastal plan? Where's your stormwater going to go? What's it look like if you redevelop some of these properties? And what incentives can you give people to redevelop some of these properties? How are we going to clean up all of these sidewalks to nowhere and the really bad lighting plan that's in downtown Montauk now? Where's the parking going to go? You know, when you just list the issues that are outstanding, you can do one of two things. You can either become overwhelmed and do none of them, which sadly is sort of what happened since the comp plan. People looked at Montauk and they said, this is a lot of work. And so they tried taking little nibbles at it here and there and never kind of came after the whole thing, which is, you know, the other approach that you can have. So now in working with the Montauk Citizens Advisory Committee and the Town Planning Department and members of the town board and the East Hampton Town Business Needs Committee, which I'm fortunate to be a member of, I think we've actually gotten to the point where the idea of hamlet planning feels like the right thing because the list of challenges is such that you realize that when you solve one of these problems, you can either integrate that solution with, you know, 2 or 3 other things on the list,
Yes.
or you can solve it in isolation and make solving the other ones harder. And so we've kind of been backed into this in a way where you say, if we're actually going to make some headway around here, it's because we're going to take that look at the hamlet-wide level and try to get something done.
That's so true, because so many of these problems are not just, you know, you got a broken finger. It's really about the whole hand, so that they're integrated
Right.
into each other. And so therefore, you really have to look at them on a more global aspect,
Yeah.
rather than into one little thing at a. But you're right that there are so many parts to it, and it's very difficult to know what's the best thing to do. But a study will give us some hints, I would hope.
Well, you know, look, I don't want to overstudy. Yeah, and
I know what you mean by that.
You
Yes,
know,
yes,
it's
yes.
paralysis by analysis or
Yes,
whatever.
yes.
And I think, you know, good intentions can sometimes go down that road. But I think we're at one of those moments where actually doing something like a hamlet plan gets past the study and into the actual planning component, which, you know, for guys like me who sort of have that, you know, urban planning mindset, or, you know, that land use mindset, natural resources management mindset, you know, there's real opportunities here. And I'll give you one very simple example. So if you take something like one of the frontline hotel properties in downtown Montauk, and if you talk about only trying to solve the resiliency problem, the coastal management problem, you're going to back into a series of solutions that don't simultaneously address the other opportunities that are in front of you. So if we kind of picture that, you know, front line of hotels in downtown Montauk, and we say, okay, on the list of problems we're trying to solve here, how much good could we do? think about if even on the same property, you pulled those back, you elevated them, you put the parking underneath, and where the septic is now on that property, you can completely get rid of that septic because you're tying into a septic management district for downtown,
Yes.
where all of that septic is, going slightly upland to a couple of sites that have been identified through the work that some of the folks in the Natural Resources and Planning Department have identified. So, you can treat these in isolation, but in the example I just gave you, which it's hard to get there, it's easy to talk about, you actually made meaningful difference in your resiliency and adaptation needs for the coastal planning part of it. You, had a huge improvement in managing your groundwater and being responsible for that. You potentially address some of your parking issues. So you line up some of these things and you say, okay, and while we're at it, we're going to make sure that the lighting is dark skies compliant, and we have sidewalks that are walkable, so we don't have people just sort of aimlessly wandering. I haven't come up with a nickname for that yet, but Montauk in the summertime, it's a little bit of a zombie town. People, they're just happy to be there. They're not in Flatbush, Ave anymore, so they know that they could just kind of meander a little bit, and it's a little bit like, okay, we all have to be patient, but guys, it's been 3 blocks. Would you mind getting out of the way? So yeah, I think if we actually line up some of these problems and try to move down the list, I think we could find some real solutions that don't just hold appeal for those of us who are looking at it from either an urban planning or a natural resources management perspective, but folks who want to reinvest in a property, but do it in a way that they know they're going to get a 20-year lifespan or a 30-year lifespan where they can amortize some of their costs or retain some of the value of their property so that it remains a viable business or it's something that they can exit from in the market. So, I think we have to, I think part of the challenge is, I think a lot of us are really comfortable with the way that we've had the conversations or the arguments on our worst day over the last couple of decades about land use and all of that. And I think we all got to up our game a little bit. We got to kind of come to the table and acknowledge that a lot of the world has moved on. The days of upzoning are behind us. We've got to, acknowledge that folks who have vested rights for certain types of commercial uses on properties have those rights, and we need to find ways to work with them to ensure that they retain those rights, but that they're also making significant improvements to the property that, not only benefit them, but also simultaneously benefit the community. Because if we don't find those solutions, what we're pretty quickly going to back into is a situation where somebody feels like they're getting something and somebody feels like they don't. And the guy who isn't getting anything is going to go to a judge or he's going to go to court, and the lawsuits get filed, and nothing's really going to get done around here.
Oh, God. You actually, one of the points that you made in the beginning of all of this is that, maybe it will take another biggie for us to all come to some kind of realization that we better start dealing with these things if we want to really protect and salvage, what we have. And I don't know what makes anybody think it ain't going to happen again.
Sadly, this is a conversation I was having with a friend of mine yesterday. Sadly, not only is something like a catastrophic storm going to happen again, but we know from all the evidence that it's happening at an increasing rate. And so storms are more frequent, they're more intense, and even, God willing, you don't have to face down a storm. We still know that we're dealing with sea level rise, saltwater intrusion. Yes. So, a couple of headlines that jumped out at me in the last couple of weeks are our region has had a 4-inch sea level rise over a period of time where we were predicted to have a 1-inch sea level rise. And, so that should scare us. And, people then look at that analysis and they say, okay, I accept the conclusion of the analysis, it was 4 inches, but here's 6 reasons why maybe that's not as bad as it might first appear. And you say, okay, I'm an optimist. I like not necessarily, automatically thinking we're dealing with the worst case scenario.
I'd like to put my head in the sand.
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, there's that option too. Yeah, but more broadly, one of the scariest things for me, and I've really got to stop, being on these email lists or whatever, how this stuff comes into me, but I've been tracking for about every 6 months, there's a new study that comes out of world-class leading experts, so like, guys at Columbia and NYU and, women who are working at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center, who really are the PhD world-class leading experts in this stuff. And every 6 months, there's a new headline that says, that stuff we gave you 6 months ago, it's even, scarier than we realized back then. So I hate to be the voice of doom, but I look at that, and on a good day, I feel like here's the opportunity for all of us to sort of pick our chins up, take a look around, and say, holy cow, we got to get serious. And on my bad days, I feel like staying in bed. But, it's, what are you going to do? You got to get out of bed. You got to put your pants on. You got to go to work, and you got to get something done.
I think we have to do everything we can possibly do. I always tell people when my mom's house sold and I had a little bit of money, I said, well, what can I do with this money? I could buy 4 coats. I could go on a trip around the world. Yeah. And then I said, I'm going to put solar panels on my roof. And you know what? I have never regretted that, even though they're not that effective when they're covered with a lot of ice. Right. Like they were this winter. I don't care. I know at some point I'm doing a little bit to help. Yeah. And that's a very important thing. Is we all have to do everything. Yeah. I mean, I'm from recycling every little bit of plastic that we have in our lives to everything we can possibly do to help this world, because it's all we got. Yeah. We don't have anything else. So if we don't start to move and take action on some of these things, it's gone.
So if you don't mind my asking, which way did you do the solar? Did you, because you could do you basically lease them space?
No, I bought them.
You did the outright?
I did the buy, yes, because you get at that time, and I would urge anybody who's interested, you get a 30% write-off on your federal income tax and a 5% on your state income tax. Mm-hmm. And what I did was I had a regular IRA, which I converted to a Roth IRA at that time, and paid the taxes on it, because then it was nothing to pay the taxes on, because I had the 30%. Right. So, in other words, I was able to, when you're a single mom, you got to think about things like that all the time, of how to save money, But I am very happy that I did it, and I think we all have to do everything. Yeah. I don't know whatever happened to the Army Corps of Engineers, where they used to talk about when we were in Fire Island. By the way, I will say, my brother-in-law's house is still standing. Yeah? Okay. Yes. Good. So all of that planting and moving back did help. Good. What they were going to do is they were going to go offshore and take these big things and shoot the sand from the ocean, bottom of the ocean, up to the beach. I don't know whatever happened to that.
So what you might be talking about is FIMP, the Fire Island to Montauk Point Reformulation Study.
Yeah, well, it was Fire Island at first, and then it became to Montauk.
Yeah, so that project was started in 1960.
I know, I was there.
Right, right, and now the primary output of that project is a stack of paper about this tall, and nothing else. So there's 2 things that really kept that project from ever going anywhere. One was political will, which was tied directly to the second thing, which is funding. So post-Hurricane Sandy, all of a sudden there was a lot of money around, and there was something like $750 million that got offered as a way to finally advance the FIMP study, as it's come to be known. And it's literally on the way here, I was having a phone call with somebody talking about this, saying, I'll give you an example. Going back to last October 25th, the East Hampton Town Board had a special meeting with the Army Corps in the Montauk Firehouse, and a couple guys from Army Corps showed up, and they said, okay, here's what we'd like to do downtown as part of this interim project that that they were still swearing was going to happen this spring. We all know that was a little bit silly timeline, but anyway, that's another story. And they said, okay, on the broader picture for FIMP, we're going to have an interim report to you by late spring 2015. And I made a note of that, because I thought, okay, I'm going to hold you guys to that. I'd really like to read that report.
I hope you didn't hold your breath.
Yeah, no. But later in the fall, last year, at some other meeting, you know, somebody said, okay, now we're looking at midsummer. So I think my job at this point is to go check in with these guys and say, look, I get it. It's not midsummer. Yeah, let's not, you know, pull each other's chain here. When are you guys going to have this interim report? I think we need that. You know, it's going to be one of the longer-term solutions around here is getting a bunch of sand on the beach. But the real long-term solution, of course, is retreat. And so the question is, out of these tools, you know, the planning tools, putting some sand on the beach, a real meaningful amount of sand, and eventually finding a way to back the hotels off of their current position. Somewhere in there is a blend of solutions that, you know, we have a toolkit now, and we can pick from those. And, you know, it's got to be supported by funding, it's got to be supported by legislation, and we've got to get out of this cycle of have a storm, here's a bunch of money, build it back exactly the way it was, where it was. That's just the definition of insanity.
Yes. Isn't that is the definition of insanity. It's doing the same thing over and over, thinking you're going to get different results.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work, you know. Well, I must say, I really love Montauk, and I do hope that, you know, some of these remedies will be used, and we can look forward to it being there, you know, because I worry about that.
It's a beautiful place.
It is a beautiful
It's
place.
absolutely stunning.
It really is. I mean, when I go to Gurney's and I walk in and I look, what a great place this is. What a great place, you know.
Yeah.
But
You know what never ceases to amaze me? I know we've only got a minute, but you can be in either the docks or downtown Montauk, and it can just be a zoo. And you can either walk or ride your bike or get in the car and drive for 4 minutes. And it's not like these are secret places. It's just everybody's somewhere else, you know. So you go to one of these trails, you actually walk for 5 minutes past the road end at the beach, and you're in this bliss.
you know what Lee Koppelman said? He said if I had to do it all over again, I would buy every empty acre. Nice. Gee, I wish he had. We would be able to keep what we have and make sure that this place stays the way we like it. Yeah. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure to talk
Thanks.
to you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Love coming in.
Yes, well, you know, we gotta stick together, us.
We're all hang together or hang separate, you know.
You're right, indeed.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to Montauk solving some of its problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that raising up putting in that, and the underground parking.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful plan. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
We're
That's
getting
it.
somewhere.
That's it. That's very good.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds great. I haven't started the music yet.